Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Conversational Witchcraft on the Cucina Aurora Kitchen Witchery podcast. I am Dawn. I am your host. I am the Kitchen Witch, and I am super excited because today I've got Dodie McKay. Dodie Graham McKay is here with me today. She is a writer, a witch, and a filmmaker. Cannot wait to talk about that. She is inspired to document and share stories that capture the beauty of nature and the visible and invisible realms of magic and witchcraft. Her documentary films include the Winnipegians and Starry Nights. She was the Canadian correspondent for The Wild Hunt and facilitates a busy coven. Her book, Earth Magic, was released in October 2021 and is already in its second printing. Wow. Dodie, welcome.
Hi there.
Hello. Welcome. So you're up in Canada.
Yep.
So it's fucking cold because we're recording this in February.
Yeah.
And it's not going to air until, I don't know, maybe May. We're going to air in April or May. I don't know. I don't have the exact schedule. But I'm looking forward to spring. I like living in a place where I have seasons. You know, I lived in Florida for a while and I didn't enjoy that because it was 80 degrees the day before Christmas. And I was like, this doesn't feel right. It just doesn't.
Well, we have seasons here. And right now it's the cold attacks my face season. And it's really cold. While you're right, it is February right now and it's minus 18 degrees Celsius. With a wind chill that makes it feel like minus 31 degrees Celsius. And I have a 5-month-old puppy that needs to go outside every 5 minutes.
No.
So I've come to really appreciate the hardiness of dogs because she's a little trooper and she will do that. But yeah, it's cold. It's cold and I cannot wait for spring.
I would hate to have to be a dog and poop in the cold. Do you know what I mean? Like having to go outside in the cold and your mom is standing there being like, come on. And you're like, I'm literally freezing my ass off.
Yeah.
I don't know why I just this is not the way I normally start an interview, Dodie. I swear it is not.
Well, you know, I was going to launch into the benefits of cleaning up after a dog in the cold. So, you know,
the benefits of cleaning up after the dog.
Maybe we need a different kind of podcast, you know, maybe
Maybe we do need to. I tend to stack all my interviews in a couple of hours or a couple of days, and I just got off of another interview, and it was really serious, and it was very like, you know, a lot of serious topics and everything. And then the minute I turned the microphone off, we started cracking up, and we started telling jokes, and she's like, "You need to do like a comedy podcast." I'm like, I swear to God, I'm usually much funnier. But the topic we were talking about was like serious, like mental health stuff. And we just needed to keep myself together. And now I'm kind of letting out all the silliness. So I apologize. I'm usually much more reserved. In any case, I am really excited that you're here. And I'm really excited to start talking with you about Earth Magic is the most current book. Is that correct?
Yes, Earth Magic was released in October of last year, October 2021.
Yeah. So how was that for you? Because my book came out in 2020. You know, all this mid-COVID book releases. It sucks, right?
Well, you know, there's not a lot of glory or glamour being a pagan writer, right? And you know, it's not like it will ever pay our bills or get us on the New York Times bestsellers list. So there's little things that I was really looking forward to doing. And I had this big fantasy that the book would come out. And I know a lot of people in Canada and the United States. And I thought, oh, I'll get in my car and I'll go on a road trip and I'll do some workshops, you know, just for fun. And that was like the carrot on the end of the stick. You know, I'm going to go visit folks and talk about Earth Magic, and it's going to be really great. And then pandemic and everything's shut down, right? And right now things are starting to relax a little bit, and we've got a trucker convoy blocking the nearest border crossing into the United States. and people are acting strange in these times. So maybe it is a good time just to hunker down and write another book, and cook a lot of homemade food, and do a lot of canning, and do a lot of witchcraft related crafty stuff.
Right, those home crafts.
Yeah,
Those things we've gotten away from that are magical in nature.
yeah.
That now all of a sudden, because in the last 2 years we've been stuck at home, everyone's like, oh, I'm going to make sourdough bread. Oh, I'm going to learn how to can. And we witches are over here going, welcome to the party.
Yeah.
Right. Where have you been? No, I completely, I'm sorry. I have a little, see, there he is. Look at him. Look at him.
Let's see the kitty.
There he is.
Oh, hi, kitty.
That's Ollivander. And he's very fancy because he's wearing a tuxedo. It's his little tuxedo spot.
I'm going to argue that's not a tuxedo. I would say that knowing what I know about black cats, when they have this white spot right here, that's called a trouble button.
Is this your trouble button?
Don't press it. Don't press it.
Yeah, he's the troublemaker. He wants you to think that he's sweet and kind, but he's definitely trouble. And they're babies. I have two of them, and they're babies. They're about 18 months old, and they're 18 pounds each, so they're ginormous. So Earth Magic. Let's get back to this. So you are a writer. You are in film. Mm-hmm. I want to know how you came from a film background into a writing background, or did the writing start first?
Well, both things were accidents. I actually came out of my first love for work was working in music stores. If you've ever read the book High Fidelity or seen the John Cucina film High Fidelity, all the scenes in the film or the book that are in the record store with all the weird guys that work there and the strange, like, name your top 10 favorite songs about gumdrops or whatever. That was my life for 18 years. And I loved it. I loved it. It being that kind of nerd, and, just collecting vinyl and going to concerts 6 or 7 nights a week and participating in the music community was such a wonderful dream for a long time. And then big life change happened. A whole bunch of stuff kind of all happened at once. And Napster came along, and the whole community that was around supporting musicians and the music industry and music stores. We used to have like big chain music stores and lots of independent music stores, lots of secondhand music stores. It all started to crumble because music became no longer valuable as an art form. It was just something that you stole basically off the internet. And some artists managed to keep it going and find inventive and innovative new ways to share and make music. But for a lot of us who were, I used to call us the support staff, right? That created communities in music stores and attending concerts and whatnot. We all kind of a lot of us got kind of lost along the way. I mean, those communities do still exist in a different way, but not like our heyday. So one day, I got a call from a friend of mine who was working in a film production office, and she just like, hey, you need something to do? Like, we just need somebody to cover the phones here for the summer. I'm like, well, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, I can do that.
I need a job, right? Yeah.
Well, I needed a job. I was kind of planning to leave and move to a different city, and was just kind of dismantling things in a way that I could do that. And yeah, somehow that stuck. That was in 2005. And it just, it was like Gilligan's Island. I couldn't get off the island once I was there. And so the film thing came around, working in a production office came around sort of backwards. And the writing thing came out of my relationship with The Wild Hunt. Heather Green reviewed a short film I made called The Winnipegians, which is I live in Winnipeg, and I made a film about the pagans here, so called it The Winnipegians. So Heather reviewed the film and wrote an article also about the film, and that's how we got to know each other. And then when she took over as the editor of The Wild Hunt, she asked me if I would be interested in being the Canadian correspondent. So I did that for about 4.5 years.
Wow.
And that was great. It was kind of one of those meetings that just sort of changed a lot of things.
Yeah.
So when Heather went to work at Llewellyn, she pitched this idea about writing a 4-part series about the elements of witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was that she would find 4 very different and distinct writers to each write an element. And she knows a lot about sort of my attitude and my politics and my witchcraft. She's like, you're going to write earth magic. And when she first emailed me about it, I thought she was like joking,
Right.
but she wasn't. And it hit me when I was driving home from work that afternoon, you know, sort of replaying the day in my head. And I'm like, wait a minute, Heather asked me if I'd write a book. And I thought she was pulled over,
right.
You know, pulled out my phone, quickly, you know, messaged her back saying, you know, no, wait a minute, it just sunk in. Yes, I'll do this.
Right.
And
right, because you don't believe it's so like surreal. You're like, yeah, of course I'll write a book. Yeah, no problem. And then you're like, wait a minute, you're serious?
Yeah, no, I you know, because people always say, hey man, let's start a band together, or you know, let's go travel the world together. You know, people say stuff like that, but no, she meant it. So you know, I had such a great time writing the book, because a lot of what's in this book are things that I do and things that I care about, and things that I wanted more people to think about.
Yeah.
And I got an opportunity to put that all in a book. The worst part of it was all the stuff that is still sitting, waiting to be published somewhere, that just couldn't fit into this book. You know, like if you read the Elements of Witchcraft series, each book follows sort of the same template, you know, for consistency's sake. So there was a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted that I wrote, that I wanted, or that I have notes on, or that is like sketched out, that I really wanted to put in a book about earth magic. But, you know, I'm hoping that can happen in the not too distant future.
I'm sure, because it's like the depth of knowledge, you know, it's earth magic going deeper, you know, it's, you know, 101 and then 102, you know, but I'm really interested in the journey, right? So I'm going to go back a little bit further. And you loved working in music. I'm a big music nerd. I have a musical theater background, which I know for somebody who's into like rock music and pop music and metal music and cool music, as my husband is, he's like, theater music. But let's go. Where did that come from? Where did the love of the music come from? And was there any, are you a musician? Do you play music? You're not. You're just one of these people that really absorbs.
I am musically hopeless. Like it's the biggest pain of my life. You know, I just, you know, everybody's doing like pandemic decluttering. I finally just sold my acoustic guitar like 4 months ago. Like I got it for my 16th birthday. It just never stuck. I just don't have that thing, you know? But I just always remember being around music. My mom takes credit for it, because she read in some baby book when I was an infant, that if you left a radio on in the baby's, next to a baby's crib, it would keep them calm. And
makes sense.
And I didn't grow out of that until I was in my 20s. Like I had to have music playing in order to go to sleep. And to this day, I can sing along with just about anything on nostalgia radio, right? Because
it's like ingrained in you since birth. Right.
Yeah.
I love that so much. But there's a magical connection between music lovers and magic. And that's why I bring it up. So many people that I've interviewed on this show have said, when I've asked them about early influences in their magical workings, or looking back into, you know, their childhoods and their adolescence, as to moments where they felt that first connection with a higher being or a higher spirit, or connection to spirit in some way. So many people have related that back to music, whether it was listening, playing, performing. So I'm wondering if there's anything about your experiences early on with music, because music is just vibration, right? That you can go looking at it, pinpoint and go, yeah, I remember feeling this connection, or there's a specific band or a specific singer that really made you go, oh, I get this. Like, did you listen to Hendrix for the first time and be like completely transcended and like, this is a completely different thing,
You know, that's a really, really hard question, actually, because I'm looking around my office and you know, you can't see this, but across the room from me is, I've got a wall of LPs, and it's like, would one of those be more transcendent in that sense than another? And I can't connect music necessarily to magic in that sense. I
Interesting.
will say though that there are, you know, if one of my favorite recording artists of all time is Roy Harper, and there are times when I just can't believe the beauty in his songs. I just can't even imagine how a mere human pulled that off. But I will say though that that sort of gateway drug to magic came very, very early in the form of books.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And
Tell me
the
about that.
well, books were, I spent a lot of time with my maternal grandmother when I was a small child. And to her, books were a real status symbol. If you had a good library, if you had an attractive bookshelf, it really said something about you as a person. And she was
Wow.
really invested in that. And, you know, my grandparents were not wealthy people. Like my granddad was like in the Air Force, and, you know, my mom and her siblings grew up as Air Force brats.
Yeah.
And so they moved around a lot. So for my grandmother to be hauling around books was just like insane, right?
Yeah.
And all of her books came from Book of the Month clubs. So she get those
Like the
nice,
Reader's Digest, Book of the
oh,
Month kind of. Yeah.
yeah, well, and nice hardcover editions of like classic literature,
Oh,
or you know, bestsellers of the day kind of thing.
yeah.
So there was a lot of, you know, Bronte sisters, and, you know, Dickens, and, you know, a full set of Encyclopedia Britannica,
Of course.
and fairy tales.
Oh,
Beautiful hardback editions of all the Grimm's fairy tales, that kind of thing.
wow.
So
Wow.
those were really, really important. And I love them because the, you know, more original editions of fairy tales weren't Disneyfied yet, right? Like they were a little
They're
darker.
harsh. Yes.
Yeah. And the magics are just part of the story. They're not the story, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
that was always really interesting. And having encyclopedias to read about, and looking at the pictures in a big old encyclopedia of, like, you know, people in different cultures, or things that are in
Yes.
museums, and
Yes.
artifacts from the past, you know, archaeology type things.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
gets a little brain really, really fired up. And just
In
the
a different
tactile.
way than we see that with children now,
Oh yeah.
because everything is on the screen now, and that, what they're looking at, although it might be like educational or inspirational, it's not the same
No.
as the tactileness of opening that book and seeing the glossy picture and what is this a picture of? Let me read, like that whole experience. So
Well,
different.
and as a kid, you know, I'm talking like 6, 7, 8. If something was like, if you're looking at an old book and you're going through all the black and white pages of text with small black and white photographs, and then you get to a glossy full color plate,
Yes.
like, that thing in that picture must be super important
Yes.
if it merited being featured in such a way. So
Yes.
that's the thing you want to read about, right?
Yes.
So cool.
100%.
And then the smell of a book, right? Like the smell of an old book, on top
There's
of
nothing like
the
that.
tactile nature of the pages and the excitement of glossy images. I mean, it's so provocative for a kid to get hooked on that kind of thing.
And engaging so many different parts of the brain, right?
Yeah.
Like, I am a tactile learner. I am not a great reader, right? So I was never that kid that could read something and regurgitate it back to you. I needed to listen to it. I could recite song lyrics for days. I needed to watch it if it had a story and it was engaging. So film, TV, for me were like things that I remember. I don't remember things I learned in books, but I remember the feeling of, as you're saying, holding that book, seeing the photographs. It plays to how we learn, and it plays to the energies that we identify with, and what is going to spark that interest in us, right?
Well, and also there were books that I wasn't supposed to read.
Ooh, don't you love that?
I loved it.
I just love that.
I loved it. Like there were books that I would be told, oh no, those are for when you grow up. You can read those when you grow up. Those are for adults. Well, naturally, I'm going to sneak those books. As soon as, Granny's asleep, I'm going to sneak out and grab that book and I'm going to read it. Right. And, that was so, like, sometimes now as an adult, I look back and go, I wonder if she said that just to provoke me.
Do you remember any books in specific that she said you shouldn't read this, and then you went and you read it?
Oh, do I ever? Because I was about 8 years old and I found this book in the bookshelf, and it was a hardcover book with a white dust jacket that had snakes around the border.
Ooh.
And it looked really, I don't know, colorful and interesting. And it was, and okay, 8-year-old girl, obsessed. I had a little diary of my own that I would write with a little lock and a tiny little key. Remember those?
Yes.
And this book was called,
I still have one.
The book I wasn't supposed to read was called Diary of a Witch by Sybil Leek. And my grandmother had ordered it from her book club because she thought it would be like a scary book. And that was something, my grandmother liked scary stories.
Right.
So she got this book and she read it and she thought it was stupid because it was just the Diary of a Witch. So I showed interest in the book and my grandmother said, oh, leave that alone. That's stupid. Don't read that. It's just the Diary of a Real Witch.
And you were like, real witch? There are real witches?
Hey, I'm relating the fairy tale,
yes,
witches in my head to what I've just been told. And I'm like, holy shit balls, they're real.
I love it so much.
I was so excited. So, as soon as she fell asleep that night, I'm creeping out. I'm going to the bookcase. It had glass doors, opened up, and I pulled the stupid book about the real witch out. And I read that thing. It was great. And I still love Sybil Leek. So there you go.
Did you steal it from her cabinet? Like, did she ever know that you read it? Did she ever know that did you take it?
I read it and I slipped it back in the cabinet. And I'm so sad that I don't have I have a copy of that book, but I don't have that
copy.
Yeah.
What a fabulous story. So there you are, getting completely inspired to, just those little seeds that get planted when we're kids, right? That those ideas about what's possible, that blows my mind sometimes. Do we have a puppy? Are you about to show a puppy? Okay. So oh my God. Okay. For those of you only listening, who is this pup?
This is Georgia.
This is the baby.
She's 5 months old.
She's only 5 months.
And she's very tired. She's just crawling. I've got a box, a cardboard box with a little bed in it for her beside my desk.
So, she's so sleepy. It's hard work being a puppy.
Yeah, she was out.
Oh my God. She just yawned, the cutest little puppy yawn.
Yeah, I'm going to let her go to bed now. But you said you wanted to see us.
I always want to see animals. I don't care about children. Just show me your pets.
Yeah, I can relate. Oh, she's very tired. Okay. So back to books.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So like I said, I wasn't a really great reader, right? As a kid, I had learning disability and stuff like that. So my father was very scholastic and he read, like my father was reading like 4 books at a time at any given time. He'd have one in every pocket of every coat, one in every vehicle, and one in every bathroom. So wherever he was, he would have a book that he could read. And he encouraged me to read a lot, but I wasn't good at it. So I leaned much more towards film and TV for my entertainment and where I found those influences. But it's amazing to me what we ingest as children and how we can pinpoint those moments and how they impacted us as to who we are now. So do you look back and go, wow, that book made me want to become X, or just gave you the idea of the possibilities of?
I'd say, well, I mean, it was definitely a gateway drug into the reality of witchcraft. And I remember what the weather was like that day. I remember I was wearing a blue t-shirt with little characters all over it. I was wearing a pair of like jeans and my favorite sneakers. Like it's such a crystal memory,
Because it
right?
was a lightning strike.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And you know, it's just books are like that, you know, and it's fun to see now how many books there are coming out about anything to do with any type of witchcraft or magic. There's just such a glut of information out there.
Yeah,
And
the influx of people being interested in any type of witchcraft, spiritual craft. I feel like there's sort of a renaissance happening right now. And I think that's born out of COVID. I think people have
huge.
turned back into the things that, what we were saying before we hit the record button, right? That like, we've been doing these things forever. We've been cooking and canning and, making teas and stuff like that. Now everybody's home because of COVID. I was locked in the house for 2 years, and they're like, oh, I want to do that. And we're over here going like, this is what we've been doing all the time, yeah, I definitely think that there's an influx of that. Have you noticed that too? Like, in film, as you work in the film industry, and I don't want to say big. I'm a nerd about everything that I love. So I'm a nerd about food. I'm a nerd about movies. I'm a nerd about music. I'm super nerdy. But do you find that those themes kind of work their way into, I know you've made documentaries about the witchcraft community, but what other work has been influenced by this path of witchcraft for you?
Well, I mean, in film, I mean, I always defer to Heather Green because she's written that great book about witches in film, Lights, Camera, Witchcraft.
Yes.
There's always been that sort of image of the witch sort of lurking in the background, whether she was a villain like in The Wizard of Oz, or heroes like in Practical Magic. We love those girls kind of thing. There's always been that sort of influence. I'm hoping that what comes out of this time of sort of enforced reflection and creativity, that more actual practitioners get involved in creating authentic stories for the mainstream.
Yeah.
I think, and spoiler alert, I've been working on developing projects, and as I'm writing funding grant proposals, like grant applications for funding to get some of these things off the ground, one of the questions that is asked for in arts grants applications is, if you are not a member of the cultural community that you're representing, how do you intend to do so with integrity, kind of thing. And I understand, especially in Canada, that is that's a question that gets asked because a lot of non-Indigenous folks try to go move into an Indigenous community and tell their story for them, and there's a pushback because there's Indigenous filmmakers should be the ones making the films about their communities.
Absolutely.
So it's been kind of fun for me as a witch and a filmmaker to be writing funding applications and saying very proudly in my applications that I am developing this film project about witchcraft. I am a witch and I have been doing this, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a real point of pride, right?
Yeah.
And, that can go one of two ways for me. It can go really well. And somebody could say, wow, everybody's talking about witchcraft these days. Here's a witch who wants to make a witch film.
Mm-hmm.
Or, wow, look at this whack job. Let's not give her any money. right? So it can go either way. But
Yeah.
I'm just loving the fact that we're at a stage of our evolution as a society that I have the opportunity to at least do that. And we'll
Yeah.
see how far we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
um yeah,
I mean,
that's my rant
it's,
about that.
no, I love it. I love it because we are kind of at that turning point where we're seeing that influx in our community, in the witchcraft community, in the pagan community. Um, and then you have influences that are maybe not great, where young people are coming in to the community and they're trying to learn, and they're maybe not learning from the best sources. And, you're like, oh, please don't watch TikTok videos. Like, go to a local shop and talk to the shop owners and get book recommendations and stuff like that. But I think it's really interesting to see that shift happening. I'm sorry, cat is crying. I don't know if you can hear it over the microphone. I think it's really interesting to be seeing that influx and how these crafts of witchcraft, meaning the cooking, the canning, the gardening, you know, making things at home, has really taken a front seat to other forms of spiritual practices where people are getting a really, really hands-on. And I'm bringing this up because I know that you love to cook and you love food, and you were just confiding in me that you wrote like 3 pages about different kinds of salt. And I just love that. Do you consider your workings with food to be magical workings?
Well, this is where I could get a kick off on a hella rant, because I think there's a difference between throwing together some dinner and kitchen witchery, right? I see these memes go by on social media sometimes that it's like, a person standing there with like a plate of food going, oh, wow, I'm a witch. I made dinner for my family. I'm like, really? Did you actually do kitchen witchery there, or did you put some food together? I mean, there's a difference. Not every act we do is sacred. Sometimes they're just survival. And I do also recognize that for somebody who maybe relies on fast food or instant food or like boil and bag food, to actually stop, slow down, open a cookbook, select a recipe, pull some ingredients together, and actually cook from scratch, that can feel like deep sorcery, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I love the process of cooking,
Mm.
and I love, there's little mindful things that you can do along the way, intentional things that you can do along the way to infuse what you're preparing with magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my heart gets all warm when people eat the food and they're like, wow, like this really tastes like something
really good.
special.
Yes.
There's something special going on here.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
that's really exciting.
I mean,
And
I love that. I love that so much. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and I love, like, you mentioned canning, and I mean, come on, there's like a hilarious stereotype out there about witches and jars and like
I
collecting.
don't, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh man.
Like cabinets and cabinets of jars. And my husband will be like, what are you going to do with all these jars? I'm like, I need them. I need them.
Yes,
And then all of a sudden I'll be like, fuck, I'm out of jars. And he's like,
I know.
how did that happen? You have all these jars. I'm like, I use them.
Yeah, they're important. I mean, I do a lot of canning, right? Like a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
When harvest season starts to roll in,
Mm.
I'm like a groupie for this market farmer that I go to every week, and I collect
Yes.
stuff from this market farmer. It's ridiculous. Like, I'm when they post on Instagram or whatever, I'm like heart, 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 everything they post.
Mm-hmm.
But I picked up 200 pounds of tomatoes last summer.
Yeah.
And they're saying to me, nobody does this anymore. What is wrong with you? Like,
I could name 5 people that do that.
yeah,
At least. Okay. They're
yeah,
hanging out with the wrong people.
yeah. But it's just not as popular as it once was to
Right.
do these
Well,
things,
that's
right?
because we don't need it, because food has become convenient. And I identify as a kitchen witch, and I also enjoy convenience food. I'd be very, very, very honest. We all do takeout. We all do box macaroni and cheese. I would like to challenge the idea of not everything is sacred, like you said, because in my mind, for me, my practice, if I'm doing something with intention, even if it is macaroni and cheese from a box, I consider that to be part of my spiritual practice because it's about the intentionality of it. It's about the energy that I'm putting into it. But it's not something, it is, let me rephrase, it is something that can be done all the time, that every meal could have that sort of energy and sacredness to it, but it's not something that you have to do all the time. And I think oftentimes people will say, well, I don't have the energy to do, to do that all the time. And you don't have to. That's the beauty of kitchen witchery, is that it is there for you 3 times a day. When you stop and eat or prepare food or whatever it is available to you if you so choose to put your magic into it at that time. But does not need to be, but it can be if you want it to be. Would you agree?
I totally agree. And we're also allowed to phone it in. Right?
Thank you.
We're allowed to phone it in sometimes,
You need to phone it in. I just said to my husband right before we popped on here, right? He had to work overnight last night. There was no sleeping happening. Back to the office kind of situation, exhausted. And I just looked at him like, babe, can we please have macaroni and cheese for dinner? Can I have your permission to phone it in tonight and make macaroni and cheese from a box? That's all. I want leftover chili and I want to put that in my mac and cheese. And that's all I want to do. Yeah, great. But chili is also prosperity food, right? When I made the chili the first go round, I packed it full of prosperity intention and love intention because of the tomatoes and all of that. So even if tonight I'm just going to throw it on top of some box mac and cheese, it still holds all of that energetic property and all of that infusion of vibration and visualization that I did in the first point. So again, there's an easy way to infuse your life with magic through food, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But so fun.
But you're also allowed to take a day off, Yeah.
Is that why you can? Do you can and jar so that you can put all that intention in, like you do all your jarred tomatoes in a weekend full of love, packing full of visualization, packing full of intention. And then you can go to the cupboard in the middle of February and be like, look, this is packed with love. Let me just pour it on some macaroni. And
that sounds completely accurate. Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the beauty of it, right? It's all that ahead of time, and it's all about that visualization. When was the first time you started canning? When did you realize that there was magic in that?
Oh, geez. When would I have started canning? That's a really hard question too. I'm trying to remember the first thing I canned. I think it was an obsession with pickles.
I love pickles.
And store-bought pickles just kind of suck. They're never garlicky enough. They're never zippy enough. They're never crunchy enough.
Never crunchy enough.
Never. And that's what I wanted. Right. So I just up and decided I was going to make some pickles, and I didn't wade in slowly. I went and bought a 40-pound case of pickling cucumbers and okay, this is what, go big or go home.
Right.
And a lot, I'm not much of I'm much more of a salty kind of person. I'm not a sweet person.
Me too. Yeah.
And, so when my husband and I got together and his sons came as part of the package, what do you feed teenage boys? Well, I know you feed them a lot of stuff, but
everything. You feed them everything that's in the refrigerator, I hear.
Yeah. And I was looking at how much jam they were eating and what crap commercial jam is. And I'm like, okay, there's a better way to do this. It doesn't even taste like fruit. Let's get some so that got me into canning preserves, jams and jellies and stuff like that. And that's fun. And then I was working for a time with a community association that had this really cool thing that you could sign up for called a fruit share.
Oh,
this is so cool. Okay, so it's a fruit share, and apparently there are fruit share groups all over North America, and you sign up And when urban fruit trees, a lot of people have an apple tree or a plum tree or whatever grows in your region that they don't care about, maybe in their backyard or whatever. They sign up for the fruit share, and you sign up as a volunteer picker. And then as things come into season and need to be harvested, fruit share pickers get a call. You go, you clean up the yard, you pick all the fruit. The homeowner gets a portion, a charity gets a portion, and then the pickers get a portion of the produce.
Oh, cool.
So I was doing fruit share picking for a couple of summers, and I was swimming in fruit. And I mean, up here in our growing area, there's a lot of crabapple trees, eating apple, cooking apple type trees. Not so much with the soft fruit in this region, but holy rhubarb and grapes, like crazy. So we were up to our waists. There was one summer in particular, just like oceans of apple butter, just like rolling everywhere. Wow. So it was a nice way to connect with the land and come to really understand and recognize what orchard crops we could access in our climate, and when they came into season and when we could harvest them, and what the different varieties of, for example, apples were available to us. And it was free.
Right.
And if we didn't do something about cleaning up this fruit, it would fall to the ground. Wasps were a real problem because they're attracted to the rotting apples. There's only so much, the birds and the squirrels can do. And a lot of people plant fruit trees because they provide beauty, and, when they blossom, I mean, come on, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
But not everybody really wants all that fruit. So, a fruit share network is a really valuable thing. So that really inspired me a lot too.
Wow. I love that so much. And I love one point that you just made about being able to be in the growing season and connecting with the plants and connecting with the Mother Earth and connecting with the season, which is a huge part of my practice of kitchen witchery and ties right back into your practice and your book of earth magic. So we're going to take like a 2-second break, and we're going to hear from our sponsors, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk all about earth magic, your book, and how you practice earth magic on a regular basis. So stay with us. We'll be right back with the amazing Dodie McKay. And no, we don't actually take a break, but if you need a break, you can take a break. So you need to.
I'm good.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah.
Step. And now all I want to do is eat jam.
I know.
That's all. I'm like, oh my God, jam. I'm literally planning. I think I have some cherry preserves in my fridge, and I'm going to eat the crap out of that when we're done here.
I just made marmalade, so I think that's what I'm going to get into.
Marmalade. I have a recipe for a citrus and Earl Grey marmalade in my book, and it is so good. Okay, maybe I'll make some. Okay, ready? Here we go. We are back on Conversational Witchcraft with the incredible Dodie McKay. And just before the break, we were talking about canning and fruit trees and staying connected to Mother Earth through these foods, which, as I said, is a really, really, really big part of my practice of kitchen witchery, is the seasonal eating. And luckily enough, we both live in a place where we have seasons, and we have that growing season and the cold season and so on. So let's talk now about how that's earth magic. I call it kitchen witchery, but it is earth magic because you're directly connecting with the earth. What other practices do you do on a regular basis that you would consider earth magic, or that we might find in your fabulous book?
Well, there is a whole chapter of recipes in this book, right?
Yes.
So I just desperately want to be like a food writer, and that was like my little foray into it. We were talking about canning. I don't live in a place where peaches grow, but not too far from here, relatively speaking, there are 2 parts of Canada that supply peaches at certain times of year. And it's a big deal when Ontario peaches roll into Manitoba. It's like I go crazy, like bonkers for these peaches, right? And I will buy baskets of them, and I will make peach pie, absolutely, and I will make
Mm,
peach jam. So,
mm.
things like that. It's that anticipation of what the next season's crops are going to bring. That's really special. Blessing
Yes.
our food before we eat it, I think, is,
So important.
yeah, yeah, and it's not only an important thing, to bless the food. It's kind of a universal technique that we have for, honoring the food we're about to eat, honoring the efforts of what it took to get the food to our table, and thanking spirit for providing these gifts. But um, it's also a moment to like sit and actually look at the faces of the people that you're sharing your food with.
Mm, I love
And
that so much. Yes.
well, it's really important, and I
Yeah.
think that um, when you just take a moment to do that, and I know that some people bless their food by bowing their heads and maybe staring into their hands, or looking at their plate, or looking at their lap, or whatever. But to say a food blessing and participate in a food blessing with your chin up and your eyes on the faces of the people around the circle, um, it might only take 30 seconds, but those memories of past feasts and meals, or even just snacks with friends or family, those are the memories I have. They're like
Mm,
photographs in my head of really
mhm.
special occasions.
Life and connection and memories happen over the dinner table or the
Yeah.
coffee table or the bistro table. They happen over meals and moments, right? A cup of
Mhm.
coffee with a little cookie on the side, that you're having this conversation with your best friend, your boyfriend, your old friend, whoever it
Yeah.
is, that happens over and around food and drink in our culture and in cultures for the longest time. you know um Something you mentioned about that, connecting with the people around the table over the blessing of the food. First, I'd like to address the blessing of the food, because obviously that's something most of us grow up with, right? But I like to think of it as the gratitude for who picked this food, who harvested this food. Not just, yes, of course, I'm grateful to the earth for giving it, but I'm also grateful for the rain. I'm grateful for whoever it is that irrigated this so that we could have it. And then taking that a step further, if you happen to be someone who partakes in meat, and of course, if you do, try to do it locally and humanely if you can. But I buy my meat at a local farm. I can see the cow across the street. Here's the cow, and here's where I buy the meat. So I know how that animal was raised. I know the people who are processing that cow. And so I'm doing this in a way where it's very conscious. And now I'm grateful for the animal, but I'm also grateful for the person who is raising and processing this, because I wouldn't want to do that. You
No.
know, I wouldn't want to do that. But I appreciate so much that there's someone out there that has the reverence for this life and the cycle of life to be able to process this meat in this way and care and love these creatures so that we can have sustenance and that whole cycle of life, which I is a little, circle of life Disney moment there, but that's truly how I feel about it. And one other point, to your point of that, connecting with the folks you're eating with, specifically if you are the person who cooked the meal, right? You put your energy into that meal, and you are the conduit of this nutrition and spiritual nutrition, as I like to call it, for the
Mhm.
people around you, right? That has gravity, don't you think?
I do. And I like the way you said that. And I just want to read to you the food blessing that we use in our circle.
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. In the name of the silver lady of the night sky and the horned lord of the wild places, we bless this feast. Food is the product of all the elements working together in perfect love and perfect trust to nurture and sustain us. We are grateful for this feast and all of the hands, both seen and unseen, who have brought it here to feed us. Blessed be.
Blessed be. That gives me an immediate feeling in my heart chakra and my solar plexus that feels so true and so necessary.
Yeah.
That I don't think people realize.
Well, and how long did it take me to say that?
22 seconds.
Right? It's not a big investment of time.
No.
Right?
No, but you mean it, and it feels appropriate on you. Right?
Yeah. And it's just a little thing. Just a little thing you can do that just tweaks a meal and forces everybody just to kind of stop for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And if you spent 22 seconds saying that and looking at the faces of the people you're sharing the food with, even if it's just your own face reflected, I don't know, in a mirror or drinking
in your wine
surface
glass,
of your water, you know,
right.
whatever.
Right.
That's something too, right?
That's magic. And that's magic.
And you by modeling that, chin up, saying something, you know, meaningful, and looking at everybody's looking back at you and at each other. And you've created 22 seconds of magic for a group of people, no matter how large or small, over the food you're about to eat. Mm-hmm. And reminding yourself and everyone else that people we don't even know brought this here for us.
Right.
You know?
Right. What are we experiencing now in the world with food shortages? What are we experiencing now in the world with supply chain shortages? When people are sick or unable to show up to do those things, it directly does affect us. When we have mass die-outs of bees that aren't able to pollinate and we don't have fruit and vegetable, everything is linked, everything is affected. So to have such gratitude for the seen and the unseen, to connect back to the cycle of Earth, how it works, and how all sustenance and all life comes from Earth. If you took food off the planet, nothing would exist, right? Yeah. If the Earth stopped giving food and we stopped tending the Earth, nothing would exist, from this microphone to this computer, because there would be no people. So it is so important that we understand those connections, right? And that's magic. And that's the Earth magic. When you were saying earlier how Heather was like, she knows the kind of magic I do, she knows the kind of work I do, and that's why she was like, you're going to write Earth. This is such an example to me as to why, you know, like, you're so connected with Earth and you're so grounded in that practice. This is just how you feel about food. I would love to hear everything else you have to say about everything else, you know?
Well, and it was like one of the subchapters in this book, I talk about how to make compost.
Oh yeah.
Right? How do you tend a compost heap? And it was like, you know, Dodie, do we really need?
Yes, we need to talk about garbage. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, yeah, we need it. You know, if you want to look at an example of the cycles of death and rebirth and, you know, examine your compost pile. And I know that having a backyard compost pile is a privilege, because not all of us have places to build a compost heap, right? Mm-hmm. But there are ways you can still participate in that, you know, by sorting, you know, if your community has a community recycling program, to actually take the time to separate your compostables from your, you know, other recyclables, you know, taking a little minute, taking up some time to invest in that. And then people argue, well, that takes time, right? Well, maybe that time is your spiritual service.
Right.
Right. You know,
right.
Time is something we have that we can ration according to what matters to us.
Right. Time is something we manage.
So, if you're looking at how to do devotional work, if you're looking at, a type of sacrifice you need to make for, spiritual purposes, why not use time as that devotional
Oh,
work or as
wow.
that sacrificial offering, right?
Right. Because most people look at the action and they'll say, well, I can't do the action because I don't have the time, right? Though I can't go volunteer to be a picker for the fruit trees because I don't have the time to be a fruit picker for the fruit trees, but I want to devote time to the earth, right? Well, that's the whole thing right there is you changing the way you think about it and saying my
Time is your commodity that you have to on offer that you can
yes.
apply according to your priorities, right?
Oh, I love that so much.
If you're a big fan of a specific earth deity and you want to connect with them, what is their thing? What is their emblem? Maybe you're a Cernunnos devotee and you want to show reverence and do some kind of devotional work. Well, take your time and go volunteer for a wildlife trust, or do some cleaning up in a local woodland, take some gloves and a garbage bag and go clean up something. Give your time to that.
Right. Because magic is what happens in that time.
Yeah.
Right. It's how we choose to spend that time. And like you said, the devotion of that time. I just, wow, that kind of just was really, really a wonderful way of putting it. In writing this book, Unearth Magic, and I know it's been out for a while, but it's so new and it's so fresh, and there's such a fresh perspective, like we're talking about here, on how to commune with the element. Was there anything in particular that really inspired you, or anything in particular that you learned that surprised you during the process of writing it?
Whew. Well, I guess it was I don't know. So during the writing of this book, I go for a lot of walks in my neighborhood. I'm very privileged to live in a part of Canada that's, Canada's a big country.
Yeah, it's pretty
Low
huge.
population density. So, it to somebody who lives in a really dense urban area, it might be funny to hear me say, I live in a really green city, but, taking advantage of that and being forced to articulate things I just naturally do, and being forced to write it down in an instructional way.
Yeah.
Was a really interesting process. And I found myself doing all these like goofy things to remember, okay, so I go wildcrafting in my neighborhood, right? There's a lot of wild plants that are, native plants and naturalized plants that just happen to grow around here that I'm fond of, that I use for magical purposes. But I don't think about it. I don't sit there and calculate measurements when I'm out with, my dog and my harvesting basket.
Right.
But I had to do that. So I was doing all these like crazy lady things. Like I had this basket, that has like long handles on it. I can kind of like sling it over my shoulder, put my secateurs and pair of gloves in there. And I go off to cut some plants. And I want to remember, it's like, okay, so what did I do? Okay. And I'm talking into my phone because it's my voice recorder.
Yes.
And I've got my dog and my basket and my clippers, and I'm out there doing all this crazy lady stuff in the back lanes in my neighborhood. So that was kind of fun.
That's great.
And to actually talk about it and learning how to talk about things in a more instructional way, and not just to, okay, well, what am I assuming people are going to know about this?
Right. How innate these practices are in you and how they're second nature to you. I think that can be surprising when you begin a process like writing a book like this, where you're like, I didn't realize I'm doing these things I'm on autopilot when
Yeah.
I'm cooking something, when I'm putting love intention into, a tomato sauce. I don't think about it. It's what I do.
It just happens.
It just happens. It
It's like the
just
difference
happens.
between cooking from a recipe in a book and just making your special dish that you make just from, a pinch of this and a handful of that.
You instinctually know how to do
Yeah.
it.
So when you suddenly have to put in
Yeah.
measurements and steps and some things that I was doing, I realized, oh my God, there's like 18 steps to this process. And if I had to break it down,
Yeah.
whoa, I didn't realize I was
Yeah.
doing so many,
Like,
so
oh
many small
shit.
steps to get to this
Yeah.
goal. It was a bit shocking.
Yeah.
But as educational for me as I hope it could be for somebody else. So
It's funny because you think, oh, I'm going to write this book about my practice. And then you find out that your practice is writing the book, right? Like it's now you're breaking down that practice and it's shining a light on everything that you do. And it becomes almost like your manual. I just posted something the other day because I use my book as it's like my favorite aphrodisiac recipes and some of my favorite spells. And I didn't write it for someone else. I wrote it for myself. And I'm like, is it normal that I use my own book? Like I cook my own recipes. Right. Like,
yeah, see, I go back to it and I'm like, wow, I sounded pretty smart that day. But yeah, my own copy of this is like full of Post-it notes.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, this is a good thing. This is something I want to remember to tell people this way.
Yes.
If it ever comes up in conversation again.
If we can bring
I whipped open my book to find the food blessing. Now, I say that regularly.
Every night, right? Yeah.
But I had to whip it open, partially because I didn't want to forget any of the words, because sometimes I improvise depending on the situation, right? Sure. But no, you got to be proud of what you write. You got to be comfortable with what you write. So the fact that you're going back to your own book, Dawn, indicates to me that book is very sincere.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I'm thinking about how we started this conversation. And I'm looking at you with that book, with all of your Post-it notes, and how this book is a chronicle of your practices and what you do and the steps in which you do them. And I realize, as you have realized, this is your witch's diary, right?
Aww.
That's what
it is. I'm gonna put a little tiny lock on it with one of those little tiny keys.
Yeah. And not only that, but you get to share it with everyone. It's a great piece and you've done great work with it. And I think it's something that people can really connect with, people that are looking to connect with the element of earth. I think you've done a really great job making it so, what's the word I'm looking for? Back to the tactile, like it's something that everyone can understand. It's something everyone can kind of get their arms around. And I think you've just done a really great job with it. And I'm just so grateful that you're willing to share your stories with us.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I want to find the quote. I was totally choked up when, people, when you write a book, there's this awkward phase where your editor says, okay, send your manuscript out to a bunch of people to blurb your book.
Yes.
Ugh. And I'm like, I don't know who to ask. Like I had people in my mind that I would ask, but when it was like, I totally felt like a basket case about that. Like that part of the process was just so traumatic for me. I did not know how to ask somebody, can you read my book and find something nice to say about it?
Aw.
But I don't know if you've met Tiffany Lazick. She's written a couple of fabulous books and The Great Work, and the other one, it's around here somewhere, I'm choking. The Noble Art is the newer one.
I have not met her, no.
No, she's another Canadian.
Another Canadian.
And, I've got this dream that Canadians are going to take over Llewellyn someday, but didn't say that out loud. But what she said in her little blurb was this is a fabulous hands-on, roll up your sleeves, get mucky, get muddy celebration of the earth. And I was so excited that she got that. Like,
Yep.
she getting mucky and getting muddy
Mm-hmm.
is just like, you know, literally with this, if you follow this book too closely, you could wind up covered in mud, or at least compost. But I love that she got that.
Yes.
You know, there's so much emphasis in contemporary witchcraft to have a certain aesthetic, this like insta ready beauty, you know.
Yes.
You know, like I always feel self-conscious now about my hands being in a shot if I'm posting something, because I don't have a manicure, you know. It's like, no, I'm a grubby little ditch witch, you know. I'm
ditch witch, I love it.
I'm crawling around in the ditch. I'm looking for something to wildcraft.
Right.
I'm checking out birds' nests. I'm chasing a snake. It's all got to be like that.
Yeah.
And she got that. And when I read that blurb, I think it was the first one that came back, I was giddy that she had mucky and muddy in the description. It was just like such a reward. I'm like, okay, everything else is gravy.
Well, I'll always blurb for you. You can always ask me. I'd be happy to
right
blurb
back at you.
Thanks. If you do a cooking book or kitchen witch book, I will be happy to blurb for you 100%. Yeah, seriously. I think it's awesome. And yeah, I mean, that's earth magic. You can't work with earth without getting it all over you. Right. I mean,
yeah.
I don't consider myself a garden witch. I'm a really good kitchen witch. I'm great at cooking. I suck at growing things, but I do like to get dirty. I will be like, there's like a 3 or 4 times a year where I'm like, I just need to go dig in the dirt. And I'm so privileged to now own a home that has a giant yard and giant gardens. And I don't even know what to do with them. But the first time I ever went out and like was pulling weeds out of my front garden, there was a snake in my garden. And I was like, obviously I am meant to be here, right? Like I am 100% jazzed to be as dirty as possible, hanging out with the snakes. I got snakes, I got voles, and I'm from New York originally. So, you know, what wildlife was to me before was pigeons and raccoons, not raccoons, squirrels, and the occasional raccoon in a dumpster. But here I have turkeys. I don't know. You don't even know what to do. Like, oh my God, we call them dinosaurs. They look like dinosaurs walking through the
They're kind of mean.
They are mean. They're bullies. But that's the whole point of earth magic, right? Is to get in the earth, like dig it up, get in it. Like if you're going to do water magic, you should bathe. You should be in the ocean. You should connect with that element. The best way to connect with earth is dig something up or plant something and then ingest the thing you plant, right? Like if you
give something form.
Yes.
Give something a body.
Yes.
Right. And whether that's creating a puppet and putting your magical intent in that like it's literally a figure of a little body.
Yes.
Or you know, making something, giving something form and putting your intent into that form. And that can take the form of cooking, that can take the form of gardening, that can take the form of, you know, doing wildlife volunteer rescue, that can take the form of, you know, anything you make. What are you making? What are you creating? What are you giving form and function to? And then imbuing your spirit and your intent.
I love it so much. Dodie, awesome.
I want to make another book about earth magic, damn it. Like,
yeah, and you should. You have all that extra information. I seriously, it should be called Earth Magic Digging Deeper. And it should be all this shit about digging in the dirt and planting stuff and making stuff and everything that you've been talking about. Like the subtitle should be Digging Deeper. And like, the cover art should be like a trowel and dirt. It's a picture of you in a compost heap. Like,
yeah. Well, there's that, and then there was the other subtitle that was. I was like, what would I do? What would I do? I was like jamming like subtitle Earth Magic to money, death, and fucking. No, that one's
good. That one's good. That one's good.
All of those kinds of like sensual, earthy pleasures, right? You know.
Yes. Somebody needs to write. We've got a sex magic book. There's a sex magic. There's, sex book, but nothing is like the art of magical fucking. Like we need somebody. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm too old to write that book, but it should be.
No, maybe, you know what? I will challenge that. And I will say, maybe you're not old enough.
I'm pretty old.
No, but think, I would take a crone's wisdom on that topic before some kids.
Well, I appreciate
it's all about life experience.
I appreciate that you're comparing me to a kid, but I'm pretty old.
Said maybe you're too old. Maybe you're not young enough to do it.
Yeah, maybe I'm too old to do it. Yeah, maybe I'm too old.
No. I think when it comes to that kind of wisdom, you want as much experience as you can get.
Right. You don't want somebody who doesn't know what they're doing.
That's right.
Right. You are just so fun. I'm having the best time with you. So Dodie, we are running out of time. I don't know how that happened. Like, I feel like I blinked and it's the end. So tell us where we can find your book. Tell us where we can find you online, how to follow you. If people want to, be with you on Instagram and learn about digging stuff up, how do they find you?
The book was published by Llewellyn, so it'll be readily available at your local bookseller. Please support your local independent witch shop. Failing that, you can order it online if you're in the US, from Llewellyn Direct, Amazon, anywhere. But local independent booksellers are going to look after you better than anybody else.
Sure.
I have a website, DodieGrahamMcKay.com. I'm Dodie_GM on Instagram, and I have a Facebook account, Dodie Graham McKay Books and Films. So those are all places where you can see lots of pictures of dirt and lots of pictures of my dogs.
Yay!
I also, one of my things that I like to create is candles. So I'm constantly posting candle making pictures.
Awesome.
So yeah, there's all kinds of goofy stuff on there, and I lots of food porn. Yes. Nothing comes out of the oven looking pretty without a photo shoot. It's ridiculous. So
excellent. Well, Dodie Graham McKay, you are fantastic. I have one more question. Okay. I ask this to everyone that comes on the show. And I think it's really fun to ask when I have someone who also practices kitchen witchery. So I obviously am a kitchen witch, and my main form of magical practice and spiritual practice is food and cooking. And if you could have me cook one magical meal for you, what would it be and why? And that's tough because you're a great cook. So you don't really need me to cook anything for you. Right? You can make whatever you want yourself. So what would it be if I was going to cook something for you, and why?
Okay. I'm going to say if you could cook something for me, it would be something mushroom based. Like I'm like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs over mushrooms. I love mushrooms. So like beautiful sauteed portobello, or maybe a stuffed mushroom, something with a lot of herbs, something with garlic, something with like buttery tones in it.
What about a gorgeous mushroom risotto?
Yeah, see, I would just take a bath in that. I would be rolling in it. I'd be just covered in it from head to toe.
Do you like truffle?
I really like truffle. Like I anything mushroom related. I'm just like I go silly for mushroom stuff.
Would you let me send you a present? Would that be weird? So I have a limited edition olive oil that we only make at the holidays. And it's a porcini mushroom and white truffle olive oil. I make a limited batch every year. I may or may not have like 3 bottles left in my possession from this year's batch. I usually reserve 1 or 2 for myself or for family members, but I might be. Are you just okay? I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it over customs into Canada, but I'm going to try.
No, anything can make it through customs if you just write a professional sample on it.
Is that true?
Don't put this part in the
Okay. Okay. So
Dodie's sinister tricks for, yeah.
So Corey, edit this part out, but say that again.
Professional samples.
Okay. I'm just going to write that on the box. Okay. So, mushrooms and truffle and risotto for you. That's going to be your magical meal. My mouth is watering right. So now I want jam and truffles. Because that's what we're talking about. And I haven't had lunch yet today. So
and we had such a bad drought here last summer, and wicked forest fires that were burning, a couple hundred, in some cases, like we were getting smoke from California coming up here because of a strange air current. But a lot of crops failed. So there was, we live in a strawberry belt here. There were no strawberries last year, 0.
Wow.
Saskatoon berries, very, very, very low numbers.
Wow.
Raspberries practically non-existent. So it was a terrible year for preserves until the Seville oranges came up from California in January. So, it's import. It's not exactly local.
Yeah.
But so it's a marmalade season now because there was just no soft fruit for jam making. It was just really lame this year.
Wow.
But
well, listen, I'm going to try to send you something. And when and if it arrives, you must let me know, and you have to cook something with it and post it and let me see, because I would love to see how your earth magic mind comes up with something to go with it. I love to see what people create with my stuff. Like if I'm like, here's a little inspiration, now go do your thing. I loved it because often people like blow my minds.
Well, you know what a lovely thing to do with truffle oil is.
Everything.
And there's a fancy olive oil store here that sells 2 white truffle and black truffle oil. I buy little bottles of it, whatever. Scrambled eggs.
Yes.
So just some scrambled eggs. As the egg is setting, throw in a glop of sour cream, like real sour cream.
Yep.
And stir that in with the eggs, and then a handful of whatever herbs you have growing in a pot outside or on your windowsill, just some chives or basil, whatever, thyme, doesn't matter, just fresh herbs. You got to have the sour cream in there. So
it makes it like fluffy and creamy and delicious.
Super creamy, like super creamy.
Yeah. And
don't let those eggs get too hard. Throw them on some toast, and then with truffle oil drizzled on top. It's all you need.
Oh my God. I do with this truffle oil that I make is it's a porcini and white truffle. So it's, sometimes you can get a truffle oil that's overly truffly. And that's something my husband does not enjoy, right? This he loves, which is hilarious because he doesn't like mushrooms and he doesn't like truffle, but he loves
you married him anyway.
He's gorgeous.
Okay. Well, that goes for something.
And he's wonderful. Like he's so wonderful and he's gorgeous. So, let it go. But he'll try everything. Like he'll taste everything. Right. So for him and the mushrooms, it's a texture thing. If I chop them up small enough and cook them, he'll eat them. He likes the flavor, but he doesn't like the texture of like a raw mushroom. It's a texture thing, which is fine. Cause I don't like plain sour cream. I don't like cream cheese. I hate yogurt. It's a texture thing, but onion dip, I could eat all day long, So it's a plain texture thing. So I just get russet potatoes and I slice them into thick steak fries and I coat them with this truffle olive oil, this mushroom truffle olive oil. I throw them in the oven on like 425, 450, just until they get crispy on the edges, take them out. And while they're still hot, I put shaved Parmesan on top. And you just have, it's like 2 minutes and it's truffle fries. And they're so good. They make your face hurt. You can't stop eating them.
That sounds so up my alley.
And that's all it is. It's potatoes and olive oil. And I'm a happy girl. Okay. We have got to wrap this up.
Okay, let's wrap this up. I will send you my address back channel.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Okay. Dodie McKay, thank you so much for being here. Everybody check out Earth Magic. I have another new best friend. I love doing podcasts because I make best friends every day. And until next time, I wish you many blessings and so much gratitude. Thanks for being here.